good morning, good afternoon, possibly even good evening to some of you sitting around the world. As Michael said, my name is Laszlo Gyorffy. I'm the principal in LBG Innovate, Silicon Valley-based innovation strategy and consulting and training firm, as Michael mentioned, and aged me 30 years in the business. But I've loved it all. I've spent those 30 years helping clients expand the possible to innovate better, faster, and with greater impact. I have had the pleasure of writing numerous books and articles, co-authoring many of them. But my real joy has been working with an amazing group of pioneering clients around the world, from the creative elites like the BBC and Universal Music Group to more mainstream companies like Swisscom, UniCredit, Dole Foods, Panera Bread, if you're having lunch at this moment, to high-end R&D organizations like SRI or DOE National Labs. It's been a great run. I am going to take you on a journey, I hope, that's both inspiring and interesting. I'm going to start from a strategic sort of leadership perspective, drop down into a sort of program building to work in harmony with that strategic perspective, talk to you a bit about the key ingredients that are going to help your program succeed, and then the impact you have, which I think we're rallying around. How do I grow my business through innovation? One quick caveat before I jump into the work here. There's a whole cottage industry around innovation. The topics I'm going to touch on have entire courses built around them. So I'm going to cherry pick the pieces that I think are most interesting that I've learned about over the years, share those with you. There'll be time for Q&A at the end, as well as I'm happy to talk with you after the webinar if we don't get into topics that you found particularly interesting. And with that, I'm going to borrow a motto from my friends at the BBC. I'm hoping to inform, educate, and entertain you at a level that you won't even consider responding to an email for the next 45 minutes as I power through all of this. With that, let's get started with a question. I want to ask you a question, a big question. When you look out the window, do you see a world of scarcity or a world of abundance? When you look out the window of your corporate headquarters, your home office like I have, your commuter train, car in the morning, is it a world of scarcity or abundance? What do you see? I've been asking leaders this question for a number of years now, and it often comes down to the answer being, it depends. And it depends how well we can innovate. If we can innovate, then the changes in the market, the changes in climate, the changes in politics, the changes in technology, all of those things start creating new opportunities. If we can't innovate, then I find myself in a world of scarcity where my margins look at risk, my market share looks at risk, quite frankly, my career looks at risk. So let's shift from that place and see if we can find a moment of abundance and a growth mindset. And I'm going to start dropping you down into how I think about those things and how they can play themselves out in terms of innovation inside your organization. But let's start with the four most fundamental strategy questions that may help us navigate a world of abundance and scarcity. One is, you sort of ask yourself, where's the world going and what do we want to become in this world? Where's it going? What do we want to become in this world? Now, the world's moving somewhere and you can decide to go there if you want. I just want to make sure you don't end up being the next Kodak, Blockbuster, or Sears, right? So if you choose not to go there, you're putting yourself at risk. But also, what do you want to become in that world? It's more than just, I want to become wealthy. What does it mean to thrive in this world that we're watching unfold in front of us? So the next question then is, where are we now in comparison to this envisioned future? And then how do we get 5,000, 50,000, 500,000 employees to help us build it? That's the gap we need to bridge, right? And I know there are two things we're going to take to require that, because it's happened in every single transformational effort and innovation project I've ever run. We're going to need committed leadership. They're going to have to want to, you are going to have to want to create that desired future. You're going to have to lean into it and want to make it happen. But it's not going to happen by itself, right? We need innovation capability. We need a business capability to allow us to grow our business and ensure that we actually achieve these desired results. So what kind of framework might help us guide our innovation thinking around that? Well, I love McKinsey and I hate McKinsey all at once, but this particular model, I think, frames the innovation portfolio you need to be able to be successful as you think about heading out into the future, right? We need a Horizon 1 set of ideas to optimize our core business and continue to improve them. We need Horizon 2 to start thinking about new markets we could go into, or next generation projects. And finally, we need a Horizon 3. We need to think about whole new businesses we could be playing in. I think that's how you begin to start building a structure and a framework to realize your vision when it comes down to how innovation can contribute. You know, a quick example of that. Remember when Apple was just a computer company, right? Operating in Horizon 1, then the iPod and the rethinking of a business model called iTunes. So propelled them into the music business. And then they disrupted the entire mobile phone business with iPhones, right? Wonderful examples of Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. Interesting. I'm going to come back to this model one more time in just a moment, but I want to make a quick comment about another company that's finding itself having to make these same kind of commitments. There are two things in my life that have come up continuously when I think about innovation, two iconic things. One is a light bulb. Everybody uses a light bulb when they talk about innovation. The other is Post-it notes, right? 3M created Post-it notes. They saw where the world was going, and they created, of course, digital Post-it notes, came up with their own app. But honestly, the world is not just digital. It's in a place of hyper digital, and Post-it and 3M realized they needed to get there too. So of course they partnered with Miro, right? With their sort of infinite whiteboards and incredible templates and market presence, right? They made the jump. The point I'm also trying to make here is every company I watch is now becoming a software company. Is anybody not investing in software? Which means, of course, every company is now working on an AI strategy for themselves, right? The world is changing. We've got to figure out how to navigate that. So when I come back to this model, I'd say two things. One is if you're able to disrupt your own business, you have a chance to reinvent yourself and continue growth. If somebody else disrupts your business, of course, we're back to scarcity and we're in trouble. And suddenly the horizon does not look so promising. The other thing I would say, I think the world has changed so much in this hyper digital space that in fact, the horizons that McKinsey has outlined here no longer hold true. I think Horizon 3 is much shorter than the horizon. You can roll out brand new businesses if you're innovative with new technologies at the moment in a much faster and continuous pace than what was anticipated when they first came up with this model. All right, so let me ground this one level further in an actual practical innovation strategy that we've watched clients use. I'm going to give you two extremes. Here's the first extreme. I love this periodic example of innovation that Cisco came up with, right? So they built an entrepreneurial program, they put it in place, and they said, here are the markets we want you to play in. We're going to grow in these places. Here are the technologies that we have capabilities in. We want you to try and leverage those with brand new business models, and we need you to come up with game-changing ideas. We need $100, $200, $300 million ideas. Employees, go to work, come up with something remarkable. But back to one of my earlier points, the reason something like this might work is they put an executive, a VP, behind every one of those markets, willing to sponsor the ideas that came up through the organization and look at them and take them seriously to see if they're worth the investments to be made in, right? Here's an example of an organization looking at Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 very diligently and creatively. I just love the periodic table idea. All right, now I'm going to take you to the other end. How do you get thousands of employees to be contributing to the success of your organization? And this story also shifted my interest in wanting to understand cultures of innovation, because quite frankly, most of the clients I spend time with have not spent time inside a culture that was truly innovative. What does that even look like, honestly? So let me tell you a quick story. I'm going to take you on a journey to Georgetown, Kentucky, where Toyota, I think they have 3 large manufacturing plants in the US. I think this is still their largest plant. And when I got a chance to get introduced to them, they had 7,000 employees there. They would come up with 60,000 improvement suggestions every year. Yes, 7,000 employees, 60,000 improvement suggestions. Let me stop here and just ask you a question. What percentage of those improvement suggestions actually got implemented? Lara, can you put up a quick poll? I'm going to get this audience engaged in trying to
Sure
answer
thing.
this question. Thank you. What percentage of those 60,000 ideas actually got implemented? You click on that real quick. 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%, greater than 50%? Laura, how are we looking?
We're looking pretty good. I want to see
Yeah,
the results?
let's share those results. See what kind of alignment we have. All right, that's fair. I must say, having told the story a few times in my life, that's a pretty representative sample of how people look at it. Most people would imagine less than 5%. On the other hand, remember this changed my career a bit, right? And it wouldn't be such an interesting story if it's only like 2, 3, 4%. The answer is over 90%. 90%. Now you're going, Laszlo, how on earth is that even possible? Well, a couple of things come into play. Back to that leadership question. Leaders make it really clear, the Toyota plant, that you have two jobs. One, you have to get your work done in your shift, and you have a second job. You have to think about how to improve things, how to improve our processes, our products, our place, right? There's an open invitation and actually a request for you to constantly think about how to make improvements. Secondly, they took the time and energy to train everybody. Back then, it was TQM, Kaizen. Now you'd call it lean manufacturing. So every employee at Toyota has a basic understanding of how to do continuous improvement. And they learn fundamental things like Muda. What's Muda? I don't know a lot of Japanese, so bear with me. Muda is the Japanese word for waste or non-value added activity. And once you learn that there's 7 kinds of waste inside a manufacturing plant at Toyota, right? Once you sort of put on like Muda glasses, you suddenly see opportunities for improvement everywhere. In fact, 60,000 times a year, honestly, they come up with brand new ideas. So it's a remarkable innovation engine. The other thing I would say is, how do you get to 90%? I get the 60,000 ideas, Laszlo. Well, so let's be clear. Most of these are small incremental improvements, right? But the reason we get to the 90,000 is they may be American workers, but it is sort of a Japanese cultural addition to this, right? Would you ever present an idea you didn't know already worked? So all of these workers who have an incremental improvement idea have tested them out, tried them out, and then they submit them into their innovation management platform for final approval. It's a pretty incredible story. I love the two extremes. My guess is your organization is somewhere in between, somewhere where Oren Harari would capture this. He says the electric light bulb did not come from continuous improvement of candles, right? My guess is you're looking for slightly bigger ideas that move the needle, better ideas that have higher chance of success, and bolder ideas, things that sort of change the game in your favor. So let's keep assuming we're going to work all 3 of those levels, all 3 of those horizons, with an emphasis on seeing if we can get to the horizon 2 and 3. So now we recognize this becomes a design exercise. How do I design innovation capabilities and programs like you saw at Cisco and Toyota? And as Arthur Jones says, all organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they get. If you're not innovating well, it's because you've designed your organization in a way that makes it really difficult for innovation to succeed. But I've seen remarkable things come up from almost nowhere, right? I live in the middle of Silicon Valley, 2 miles from Apple headquarters, and we still have a garage culture. Everywhere you look, people are coming with world-changing technology breakthroughs from garages, right? And sometimes the design of your innovation process, if it's a garage, can just be a statement of intent, right? This is how we operated at the garage back in the HP days, right? In the early days. Believe you can change the world. Work quickly, work whenever, and keep the tools unlocked. Know when to work alone and when to work together. Trust your colleagues. Share tools and ideas. No politics and bureaucracy. These are ridiculous in a garage. Now, they may be harder in your organization, but at least at a garage it was easy. Customer defines a job well done. Radical ideas are not bad ideas. Invent different ways of working. Make a contribution every day. If it doesn't contribute, it doesn't leave the garage. That works for a garage, works for big ideas when you're starting from scratch. But I know that's not where you are. But what does your garage look like? What is your innovation system? What is the architecture, and how do we design it into a realistic ecosystem that supports the kind of innovation that you need to do to allow your organization to continue to grow and thrive in an incredibly fast changing world, right? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drill down into each one of these and spend a quick moment highlighting some of the elements that I think may be most important for your program building. And I'm going to start with one that I began with because I think I really want you to hear this message about leadership. So let's head out to the Louvre and the amazing pyramid they have just to define what a typical organization looks like. We've got leaders and workforce, and we're going to show a little bit about how we put these two together. But what does leadership actually have to do in a world in which you need them to have continuous innovation? You need your employees to have continuous innovation on their mind. All right, your fundamental tasks are to inspire. Where are we going? You're leading. You're not just managing. You're leading people in some direction. What is that direction? Why should I give up what is often some of my own free time to contribute my ideas and energy toward innovation efforts? You need to inspire and you need to enable, right? You need to set direction, priorities, sponsor innovation, help build a program that's capable of delivering on the promise of your new future, as well as fundamental projects and initiatives all the way along the line. And you need to be able to promote innovation. So let me give you a quick sort of celebrity example, since I have a little surprise at the end of this story. But somebody like Jeff Bezos, right? Here's a question he was asked a few years ago after one of his sessions. What does day 2 look like? That's a question I just got at our most recent all hands meeting. I've been reminding people that day 1 for a couple of decades. I've been reminding people that it's day 1 for a couple of decades. I work in Amazon building named Day 1, and when I moved buildings, I took the name with me. I spend time thinking about Day 1 because Day 2 is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that's why it's always Day 1. Okay, he's got an entrepreneurial spirit and a flair for language, but he's treating his business as if it is a young startup in many ways. I think it's probably why he emphasizes so much around revenue and less around profitability. But symbolically, he names his business as if it's a startup business. And he has the nerve and chutzpah to get into his own products and fly up into space, right? That's an interesting role model already, right? So he's leaning in, he's demonstrating his commitment to what innovation might look like at Amazon. And there's no doubt that they've been successful despite some of the HR issues and some of the things that make me cringe. Still, around the innovation front, definitely a champion. So what do we need from the workforce? We've got leaders who are inspiring people to give their best and most creativity and enabling to do it. We need a workforce that's willing to imagine a better future and willing to help make it happen, right? To implement it. We need them to identify opportunities, generate ideas, collaborate with colleagues, customers, partners, suppliers, and deliver on the results. And like the Toyota innovation engine, if we can get leadership and workforce working in harmony like two innovation pistons, we end up with a remarkable culture, right? One with infinitely number of high potential ideas to implement, speed, agility. We become an employer of choice. People love seeing their ideas realized at work, right? It's incredibly powerful. One element I didn't bring up in the Toyota story is imagine 60,000 times a year you watch your ideas get implemented inside that factory. Suddenly the level of ownership and pride for the product, the car, just goes through the ceiling. In fact, you get to a point where if you go through a tour there, people are smiling because the machines work for them, not the other way around. That's what a culture of innovation starts looking like. And of course, it can become a competitive advantage. And in a rapidly changing world, do you have a modern innovation system, or are you stuck in an old, archaic way of thinking about things where your innovation efforts are too slow, too small, too costly, too siloed, too pushy, too resistant, too little data, too little funding, too impatient, too political, too insular, too risky? Forgive me if I'm sort of overwhelming you with potential limitations to your innovation efforts. Let me actually reduce this down to one question. That's another question I often ask clients when I walk in the door. Lara, can you help me with this? The question is, if I had a great idea, how difficult would it be to find someone with the authority and funds to potentially sponsor it? They don't actually have to say yes, but how hard would it be to get to somebody who actually could make this idea begin to become a reality? Let me ask you to just take a minute. Pretend you're a frontline employee walking around your organization. You go, I got a great idea. How hard would it be to find somebody? Difficult, very difficult, fairly easy, really easy. All right, Lara, let's see where we are. It's difficult. I mean, innovation inside organizations is challenging. I mean, for many managers, that innovation idea is an internal disruption to the control and processes they put in place, the standardizations they have to make sure that they have a predictable workflow and all of those things. Difficult, fairly difficult, easy. And we got a few people here I'd love to talk to. The fact that it's very easy means you must have some level of maturity inside your organization around innovation. So it's actually exciting to see I've seen much worse. Let me put it that way. So that gives me hope. All right, let's keep going. All right. As I said, I can't take on all of this stuff. So in fact, I'm going to focus entirely on sort of tapping into the collective genius and passions of your people inside the walls of your organization, your employees. And I would love to run another session on open innovation because there's so much great stuff around co-creation and collaboration and working outside the boundaries of your organization. I just can't take it on for this one, but maybe that's a follow-up conversation we could have. So let me keep going. Let's hit some other ones. All right, innovation platform, right? It's a digital era. We need digital tools if we're going to try and innovate at scale. I often say if you want systematic innovation, you need to have a system, right? My friends at IdeaScale have a wonderful one. But fundamentally, we need to be able to reach out to employees. We need to create a level of transparency. We need to have easy invitations to invite them in to participate. But it's not just collecting ideas, right? It's establishing a discipline, a workflow that lets us go from ideation to screening to refining to approval, right? It gives us the momentum to get to a place where we can actually determine whether these ideas are valuable and begin to support their implementation down the road. Now, I gave you two examples, a Toyota example and a Cisco example. Those are two of the places in which I see most clients use these kind of innovation platforms. And I call one spontaneous, the Toyota example. Anytime, any place, somebody's got a great idea. Thank goodness they have a vehicle for which they can submit that idea and see if it gets approval and it gets worked on, funded, and supported, right? That's one. The other one I call is the sponsored innovation. It's a bit more like the Cisco one, but all of these things fall into that category in which somebody's committed to solving a problem, addressing a priority, inspiring level of innovation in some area where they see a big opportunity. The fun part about this is you suddenly have a whole group of people inside your organization all working toward the same ends. The level of collaboration and energy that gets unleashed when you're all trying to solve the same problem is actually really fun and exciting. And maybe through either of these, and I get clients who do both, right? Manage to have an open invitation as well as a sponsored innovation project. The cool part about this is maybe for the first time ever in your organization's history, its scale, its size, and its diversity work to its advantage, right? When you're crowdsourcing ideas, the crowd comes from different places, different backgrounds, different functions. They have different views. They come up with partial solutions that you're able to build on from other parts of the organization, that diversity of opinion. And now the scale, the walls of your silos break down, and suddenly the scale and your capability to harness those ideas can work in your favor. It's a wonderful boost. In fact, one quick story along those lines, and I would love to hear if somebody's got a bigger, more successful idea that's ever been submitted into an innovation management platform than the one that Charlie Ward came up with, which was the foundational concept for Amazon Prime. He was a software engineer. He submitted the notion for Amazon Prime, and it's worked out pretty good. I'd call it sort of a unicorn within, right? 200 million Prime members in 22 countries, and the idea is worth $25 billion annually. That's a pretty good idea. I know we all wish ideas like that would come at a regular pace in our organizations. But anyway, if anybody's got one bigger than a $25 billion idea annually, I would love to hear it because I've been touting this one for a few years now. All right, let's move on to methods, right? Clearly, a platform obviously is one of the methods, but I want to drill down into one of the particular challenges I see in organizations over and over again, which makes the finding of sponsors inside the organization particularly difficult for some of you who said that was a challenge. This may help you understand a little bit why. Most of the people inside organizations, bright, talented scientists, engineers, frontline workers, whatever it may be, call center people, are almost all amateur innovators. They have all sorts of talents and capabilities, but they've just never been trained in innovation. They get the seeds of a potentially good idea. What do I do next? I don't know. And if I'm presenting something that's bigger and bolder, is this career threatening? I mean, if it doesn't work, or I just embarrass myself at a staff meeting when this idea looks like it's going nowhere, is there a safe place in our organization where I can test these early stage ideas and I get nurture around it? Getting off the ground can be a big challenge, right? The other side of that, of course, is most managers aren't trained at being sort of venture capitalists. They don't know how to coach people into coming up with ideas that are bigger and bolder. They're not sure how to invest in them. As I said, often it may seem counterintuitive to them because it may disrupt how they think about it. When you're working on sort of self-evident continuous improvement ideas, this becomes much easier because the investment level in the ideas are less. They are self-evident. When you start solving bigger problems for other people, this challenge plays itself out. It's one of the reasons we did a bunch of research here in Silicon Valley and other places, and we found one answer to this question, and there are many others. There are all kinds of innovation tools, but this one we particularly liked because it said, what are the 6 questions that anybody who's come up with an idea that's will require some level of investment of time and resources need to have answered? So these questions formed an acronym called CoStar, and they go like this. So who's the customer for your unmet need or the problem you're trying to solve? Right? Who are they? They could be internal customers, external customers. So who are they and what's the problem? How big an opportunity is it worth us pursuing this customer problem? What's your solution? How does it work? And will it really solve this customer opportunity? Who needs to be on the team to ensure its success? What's your advantage over the alternatives? The many ways to solve a problem. Why is the one you've just come up with the best way for us to proceed? And finally, what are the results? You say you're solving a problem for this customer. What do they actually get for it? And quite frankly, what are the returns back to the organization? In order to create value, most organizations, we need to work on both of those things. We need to solve the problem and it needs to come back in a way that creates value, right? We need desirability, feasibility, and viability. We call that a value proposition, right? That's how you get started. Turns out it's very helpful in the front end of your process. It gives an amateur innovator a place to go. Oh, I know the questions I need to answer. They can begin perfecting their idea. They can pitch from that. They can use it to prove their idea. They can guide their prototyping. It becomes a foundation for core proposals, business plans, and things like that. Again, there are other ideas, but this one seemed to hit a sweet spot for us as a problem we kept running into over and over and over for organizations who wanted to do innovation at scale. How do I get my employees to take that first and productive step toward creating value? All right, so we got some tools, we got a platform. What's the mindset we need to have inside our organization? That's something we need to nurture. Maybe it's a bit of a Nike thing, like just do it. Like, wouldn't it be great if every one of your employees came to work believing their ideas could shape the destiny of your enterprise, or at least their team, their department, their region, right? We'd like them coming to work, imagining that those kinds of things are possible. Now, before you freak out, not all 10,000, 50,000 employees are going to be innovating at once. They may also be working at different parts of the innovation process. If you've got 10% of your organization actively working in innovation, you're doing really, really well. And you also find you get a lot of repeat innovators, and I believe those should be your future leaders if you pay attention to who steps forward and thinks about improving your business and has the right entrepreneurial mindset. And you also want them to be able to generate ideas that don't bump into sort of all the obvious limitations that we have at the moment inside our organization, the silos and the lack of a shared common language and methods, right? We want them to be able to come together with common innovation language, concepts, practices that allow them to discover new insights, identify unexploited opportunities, and develop valuable business ideas together quickly and cheaply. That's what a culture of innovation starts looking like. We start having ways in which we can all talk and work with each other around creating new value. Without common language, it gets really hard to do this on a consistent basis. So I encourage you to spread the word, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about how to do that. Next one, teams. Teams are critical. Nobody does this alone, right? It always requires a team effort. The lone genius may come up with an initial idea, but they can't possibly develop it and implement it. So being able to think about how do we create teams, and there's one specific one I'm going to get to in a minute, but let me start just, again, give you another example of how people think about innovation programs differently. Work with a client in Italy, actually, I will say is probably the sexiest training facility I've ever been in. Very Italian. I absolutely loved it. But what they did is they recognized their next generation of leadership, their high potentials. They wanted them to have innovation skills. They recognize they're going to need this for the modern world. So we put them through a program in which this cadre of people, which will now become sort of seeds of innovation support throughout the organization as they move up in the organization together, learned innovation skills and learned how to mentor and coach other innovators inside the organizations. Interesting training model that HR came up with. Was a lot of fun to work on. One other thing is we're talking about innovating at scale to help generate growth ideas from all over the organization at all different levels. On-demand e-learning, what a great way. We can now scale training at levels we never could before, right? We can train leaders, we can train employees, and in particular, I want to talk about the one group that I think could benefit from this specifically that you might not have thought of, and that's the innovation teams. Most of our innovation teams, when they work, they start out potentially something like this, a bit of a shared service, or they get dedicated to one particular part of the organization. But my hope is that they become so successful that other parts of the organization say, we need that. This is terrific. And they become a center of excellence, helping any part of the organization develop and implement its innovative ideas. However, they do face a little bit of a challenge, and that is the more ambitious the organization, the more weight gets put on them. How do they increase the sort of influence and presence inside the organization and the ability to capture the talents and the ideas that exist there? And one of the ways we've found to help them out is to not leave it to the 3-5 people who are on the innovation team, but invite them to create a volunteer group of networkers across the organization. These are people who are natural problem solvers, change agents, like working on cutting edge solutions. They'll raise their hands, or the managers know them and will volunteer them to be part of it. But we put them through a training, they learn fundamental innovation skills, and suddenly this 3 or 5 people may have 100, 200, 300 innovation catalysts who've been certified to support innovation efforts, right? They become local ambassadors for the innovation projects you have going on, recruiting new people, inviting them to participate. They become coaches, helping those nervous people with their early stage ideas, or putting people together within their own organizations as a local resource. They can facilitate innovation events. They act as change agents, both in terms of, hey, we're not getting any ideas out of our Asia offices. What do we need to do to improve their participation? I know they're talented. How do we get them engaged? Or the other way around. There are some real heroes around innovation in my part of the organization who aren't being recognized. Let's see if we can get their profiles elevated so that they get recognized for all the good work, right? So you add a group of people to the process who do this as a side hustle, but a very impactful one. All right, I just mentioned recognition. All right, let's talk a moment about incentives. You can't do enough recognition. That's the shortest answer to this problem, right? Recognize. It is the easiest and most impactful thing you can do. I've watched clients have wonderful dinners where they celebrate the best innovators of the year. They join them in their annual strategy planning session, and they have a nice dinner where they're acknowledged. Seen other companies put together actual awards. And it's very cool to walk down a set of cubicles and see people with their little awards sitting on the shelf there, acknowledging their contributions, whatever that might look like. If you're going to head down the path of actual rewards, monetary rewards or other things, I'm going to give you a nice example later on when I give you a client example. But in general, the place I like to go is to do them around professional development. It's a win-win, right? Take them to presentation classes, allow them to go to the conference of their choice. I love that stuff. It keeps them learning and growing. It's the spirit behind your whole innovation process. So whatever rewards you do, make sure it aligns with the actual sort of innovation campaigns and the direction you're heading. What I would say is don't make the rewards too big. I have watched this undermine innovation efforts. If the rewards get too big, people start hoarding the ideas instead of collaborating and sharing them, right? The antithesis of what you're trying to get done here. So that's my one caveat around rewards. I'm going to show you one, as I said, I'll show a cool example of that in a little bit. All right, metrics. Metrics aren't important. I'm just going to skip this. No, I'm kidding. absolutely critical, right? The old adage, you can't manage what you can't measure, absolutely true in innovation. It's critical to be able to track your progress. You know, if you're trying to grow your business and you set out a big KPI like let's generate 30% of total revenue from new products and services introduced over the next 3 years, that's a hell of a goal to set out there, right? And we want to make sure we're tracking from the very beginning whether we're making progress. So how do we need to improve our process? So let's think about what are the innovation inputs and measure those and make sure the innovation outputs are hitting on all the notes that we need to validate the fact that we're actually making progress and learning fast enough about what makes us successful as an innovation organization, right? I mentioned using innovation platforms. I think in my experience, they are particularly helpful in the front end of the innovation process. They do great at the outreach and managing engagement levels and processing the first wave of ideas and the second wave and the third wave and tracking them and keeping an archive. Really helpful. Creating dashboards that allow the organization to realize where they're going. It gets to be a little bit of a struggle, though, on the back end. And the reason for that is because many of the innovation ideas move out beyond the control and the invitation of your innovation program. Different sponsors implementing different things, different IT groups have different roadmaps. It is a complex organization to actually get to do implementation around. Doesn't mean your platform can't track that. It just means that it's more difficult, right? And I think being able to create a dashboard that shows the progress beyond estimated benefits to actual realized benefits is really important. But my bigger message around all of this is this, I started with a talk about committed leadership. This is the test of commitment. This is where every leader needs to think about, am I serious about implementing this? This is where we need to take the no out of innovation across the board. We need to have leaders willing to experiment, to try new things, to make room on their roadmaps. Doesn't mean it's finalized idea, but let's at least give time, space, energy to trying out new things and see what we learn along the way. That's where your leaders need to be the most help. And that's what I mean by being able to sponsor innovation at the back end, right? You're not going to get across the finish line. And in fact, you may undermine all the good work you've done previously if you're not willing to weigh in and create time and energy for organizations to implement some of the ideas and at least test them out. Okay, so what does the impact look like, right? We've got committed leaders, we've got an innovation capability, we've built it, we've built our own garage. What are the kinds of things we might be able to expect? You know, I call this, when it works, sort of a discipline of innovation, a collective discipline of innovation. So obviously you're going to try more ideas. You've got people engaged, they're helping the organization improve and invent a better future. We got many more ideas. That's number one. One of the cool parts is you have many more slow failures, though. The zombie projects get washed away as the discipline starts challenging them to look at whether they're really creating value. And because there are many other good ideas that are, people are unwilling to just allow themselves to keep funding these ideas. So you have a lot more slow failures where we test and validate ideas early and often, right? My motto around this is think big, start small, learn fast, and create value, repeat often. Okay. You're going to have a lot more fast failures. Now, the word failure in the innovation space may not translate as much to people who aren't in the innovation world. What you're really saying is we're going to learn faster. We're going to learn what works and what doesn't work as quickly as possible. And so you try more ideas, we're going to learn quickly about how to succeed with those. You know, I was thinking early this morning, I was sort of getting my head around the fact that we have another Olympics coming up. I'm a huge Olympics fan. We get Summer Olympics in Paris, and I remember a bit of research was done in the Olympics a number of years ago. It was actually Winter Olympics, and research was tracking the practice sessions of all the ice skaters. And guess what? The two ice skaters that fell down the most while they were practicing turned out to win the gold and the silver medal. You're saying, how can that be? They're obviously not the worst ice skaters. No, but they were trying the hardest tricks, right? One reason you fail more is because you're pushing the envelope about what your organization can innovate like. And if you're not pushing the envelope, you're undermining your own potential around it, right? All right, so fast failure, said enough around that. You're going to obviously have more innovation successes. Thank you, more ideas, pushing through, more successes. And the other good news is a lot less missed opportunities because you're pursuing many things. You're tapping into a collective set of priorities that hopefully align with where the overall organization is going. And you tap into all that. All right, how might you do this? One of the approaches that's been successful for a while now is to think about a three-phased process. How do I quickly set up a proof of concept for my new innovation program? Right, I'm building out this HP garage inside my organization. Let's see what works. Right, find out basically what works, what doesn't work. For those initial successes, we can now widen it. We can invite more and more people to participate. And then after a while, the momentum builds and we can start deepening. We start weaving innovation into the fabric of our organization. So it's just how we work, right? We're continuously improving our own innovation process and hopefully driving toward the growth and your desired future in that way. One of the things I point out in that first phase or two is you don't have to get everybody on board all at once. In fact, I wouldn't try that. I would follow the path of least resistance. Get the most interested leaders, get the early adopters. I would run experiments there, demonstrate the success of the idea. More and more people get excited about participating. Innovation is really an engaging process when it's supported correctly. And eventually the rest of the organization starts falling in place. Or people leave because they just don't really care enough about innovation, and that's good for you, right? You want people who are willing to work hard for this organization's future, and let's keep those. And the ones who are less interested in that, let's have them move on. All right, one concrete example, and then I'm done. Because we're running out of time for that as well. All right, Swiss Post, you're laughing already. Why does Laszlo show a post office? That is not typically what people think of when they think about innovation. The Swiss Post is phenomenal. Also, they're much bigger than that. I think the second largest employer in all of Switzerland. They're responsible trains and buses and transportation. They have their own bank, et cetera, et cetera. So they do more than typical post office activities, as well as shipping packages all around the world. They came to Silicon Valley, got a bit inspired with the people we put them in through, the thoughts about how to build their own program. Fundamentally, they plateaued. They had some innovation things in place, and they were just not getting the next level of revitalization that they needed to be able to make sure that they hit their margins and continued their success. So they did simple things like you'd imagine, started holding pitch competitions, inviting people to look for new sources of revenue. So they said, how else can we get to Horizon 2, Horizon 3, what else could we be doing? Here's one of the things I loved. If you win the pitch competition, if one of the winners, you actually got to come to Silicon Valley for 2 weeks and work on your idea. Again, I love the idea of being able to support people to build out their professional skills while also serving the needs of the organization. They put in a much more vibrant platform. These are old stats. I don't know what it is now, but they instantly got a lot more enthusiasm around it. With thousands of people participating, tens of millions of dollars of improvements. Right? They took it very seriously. They hired a chief innovation officer who did most of this work. They embraced the use of CoStar and the notion of using value propositions as a fundamental currency for innovation inside their organization. Remember, I kept saying I was going to tell you about one of the nice little rewards for working. If one of your ideas got approved at whatever the level was, you got to drive the electric car for a month, which was kind of fun. And the other cool part about electric vehicles, as you know, is always at the front of the office building. So not only did you get to drive a cool electric car for a month, but you also got to park right in front of the office building. Anyway, a nice reminder of people's contributions. And all of that, they kept an annual report updating people of all the progress, the contributions, the outcomes. Two of my favorite of those outcomes were they were the first people to put in a shuttle, an autonomous shuttle inside of Switzerland. It's very cool. It's in Sion. Sometimes you get a lot of resistance around innovation. On the other hand, if you're doing really cool, bigger, bolder things, sometimes people rally and make stuff work. They had to change a number of rules to allow an autonomous vehicle to roam through their city, and the city council employees rallied. It was very cool. The other one I really like is drone delivery of blood samples from the smaller cantons into the major hospitals. They were cheaper and faster. Really cool out of the box delivery methodology. And of course, if you do all of that and you do it well, you suddenly find a post office in the world's 50 most innovative companies, right? That's what they were able to get out of their garage efforts. All right. Hopefully nobody had a chance to write an email during that high-paced description, but now I'm going to shut up for a little while and And Michael and I are going to field some questions if you have any.
Yes, and there are some that we've received, Laszlo. So,
Okay.
first of which is a very thoughtful one from Lou, who asks, "What role does the culture play in stifling creativity and innovation, though? I get that employees, managers, etc., are not trained in innovation, but what are we trained in then? We're mostly trained through grade school, high school, and even in higher ed, and in OTJ training and other training. We're still mostly trained to be great factory workers, to fall in line, to not question the way we've done things before. In my mind, for better or for worse, those companies that espouse such a stunted and outdated cookie cutter way of thinking deserve to die on the vine." Um, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. When people talk about sort of getting out of the box, what is the box? The box is the set of assumptions we make about the world and how we operate. And you're absolutely right. If you go back to kindergarten, right, we had free playtime with all kinds of fun toys, and we build stuff all over the place. It was great. And then we end up in schools where we're sitting in desks and we're absolutely having to rotely memorize and pitch back stuff, and then we get into organizations who put us into silos and boxes. You're absolutely right. We don't do a great job of developing the kind of creative spirit that is needed inside organizations. I do think it's one of the reasons they struggle. Yes, it gives them some control, right? I often think of the disconnect. Managers build organizations and they want them to run like a Swiss watch. But when we do things like innovation, we actually need a bit of a sandbox, places where we can play and experiment and try new things. But what happens when sand gets into your watch? It screeches to a halt. So I get the fear factor that managers have about being more innovative, and I get why they perpetuate. Um, Unfortunately, some of the methodologies that undermine people's creativity at work. It was one of the reasons so many of the early days were so interesting at Apple and Google and stuff, because the insides of the building were much more interesting than the outsides of the building. It invited people and pushed the envelope around, asking people to participate in creative new things. Longer conversation, but great insight. I do think we school people. 5 + 5 is 10. Why you never ask, how do you get something that is plus plus is 10x better? Right? That's a question we should be asking our kids at school and employees.
Excellent. Here's another one from Christian. When we start collecting ideas at my company to solve a problem, there's a lot of initial momentum, but it soon trails off. And you and I have actually talked about this.
Right.
How can we keep employees excited and motivated to continue submitting ideas?
All right. This is one of these longer ones. We talked a little bit about incentives and rewards. That is one place you can help keep the momentum. Another one is to keep leaders engaged in the process. Not only continue to invite employees to participate, but demonstrate that those ideas that they do contribute actually get implemented. Even some of the ideas, this is going to sound like blasphemy, that depending on what your corporate culture is like, even if the ideas aren't great, it may be worth the investment in demonstrating your commitment to trying it out, and testing it out. The other thing I would ask sometimes for organizations that find a bit of a disconnect between engagement and implementation is ask the employees for a value proposition for their idea. And you will see, yes, you will get fewer ideas, but the ones you get are higher quality and you can actually do something with them. If you're an employee and somebody says, hey, we should, come up with electric kites, and they submit that into the system, you're not going to make electric kites, and yet they don't feel heard or recognized. So making sure also you have people who respond to each of the ideas, even if they're not great, but that may be one solution. Hey, electric kites, that could be interesting. Why don't you create a value proposition for why we should do that? And you'll see a lot of ideas go away. I also think, sorry, maybe I'm taking too long in this question, but
No, no.
it's a big one. If you're going to do a model in which you have spontaneous ideation, the beauty of that is anytime, any place you get an idea, the challenge around that is behind the scenes, those ideas need to get to people who can actually do something with them. So if it's an HR related idea, you need to have an HR related sponsor who's reviewing those ideas regularly. If it's going to have finance, it's got IT, if it's going to have sales, if it's going to have marketing potential, all of those things. So it requires, again, building an architecture and an ecosystem that allows the exchange of those ideas, the development of those ideas, and the constant engagement of those ideas. Hope that helped. Again, it's a big question. And
Great,
Michael,
thank you.
if you've got best practice ideas, please, jump in.
Sure, yeah. The next one, I'm not sure who this was posed by, but my company doesn't have a designated innovation team or person. Will this be a problem when trying to establish a more structured innovation program?
Yes.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
You sort of answered your own question. There are places I've seen that have wonderful pockets of organic innovation that seems to thrive, and they usually, honestly, it's usually around a somewhat inspired leader who sees the potential in asking questions, inviting people to participate in their group. In that way. But if you want to be able to systematically invite people and elevate the level across your enterprise at any level of scale, yes, you are going to need a dedicated group of people. And honestly, that's one of the first tests of commitment by the leadership. If they're not willing to invest in a group of people to help harness those ideas and guide them through towards some level of innovation, I just don't think they're taking innovation that seriously. I mean, organizations have entire R&D groups, entire product development groups. All of those are dedicated resources, but they're isolated, right? Working on very specific things. You need a complement to that to operate across the enterprise if you want to head that route. Maybe you don't need to, but if you do, yes.
Excellent. And that is pretty much it. Those are the questions we have. So, Laszlo, thank you so much. This
I
was
appreciate it.
Incredibly valuable time with you, and we greatly appreciate it.
No, it was my pleasure, Michael, Laura, Lizzie. Thank you all for inviting me and allowing me to share my thoughts. And for all of you who are still out there on the line, thank you for listening to me again. Happy to chat further about any of these topics. Good luck with your innovation efforts. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attendance.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.